Welcome to How to Live Slow, the podcast where we discuss slow living for the modern woman and help you design an intentionally slower family life. I'm Rachelle Glendon, your personal slow living coach and host of this podcast. I know all about busy, but I love living slow. Enjoy the show. Well, hello and welcome to episode 52 of How to Live Slow. If you're new here, welcome for the very first time, or welcome back if you've been here for a while. 52 episodes means How to Live Slow is officially one, which I cannot believe. So first of all, I just have to say a huge thank you to everybody who has supported this podcast over the last 12 months and who has been here learning how to live a little bit slower and allowing me to continue showing up here each and every week. Something that I've really learned about myself over the last 12 months is that I'm not actually as much of a procrastinator as I thought. I've always had the belief that I procrastinate too much and I leave things to the last minute. But what I've realized is it's always been because I haven't had a deep enough why as to why I'm doing things to really get past all my fears of failure, fear of success, and get myself out there doing things. And it has been an indescribable privilege to be able to do this podcast each and every week and be here to support you in your efforts to learn how to live slow. I really do see you and appreciate you, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for showing up here in any capacity. And the part that's been most beautiful has been the community that is growing around How to Live Slow. So I've been practicing and I'm starting to get a little bit better at being regular, sending out emails as well, which I absolutely love to do. And I've been even committing to going live inside my free Facebook group once a week on a Wednesday afternoon. So if you're not already in there, you're invited to join us. It's really taking off. We've got 30 new members in the last couple of weeks. So we're now edging towards 150 members in there. And we're all just a bunch of mums trying to learn how to live a little bit slower and work through all of the reasons why it is so hard. And I know I shouldn't say it's so hard because look, slow living it's a simple process. It just requires you to do the 4 pillars of slow living, which I have called doing less, needing less, being more, and living more. And those 4 pillars, it really is a simple process, but it's not necessarily easy because there are so many factors that come into play as to why we get busy in the first place, why we find it so hard to slow down. There are external factors like social conditioning and all of that. And then there's the internal factors of, feeling not safe in the present moment, or all the stories that we hold around the importance of being busy and what kind of person we are, and our FOMO and our ambition. And there are so many factors that come into play. Least of which is the fact that if you're a mum, you've probably got work and kids to deal with, or some sort of scenario where you're the flexible one, maybe in your relationship because your partner's got a big job or things like that. So mums are in a very unique situation when it comes to slow living because a lot of our time is actually not our own in a lot of ways. So yes, come and join us in the Facebook group where we talk all about this in so much more detail. And it's where I share all the information about, my programs and coaching opportunities and things like that. So if you want to go a little bit deeper, once you've gotten to know me, once you've gotten to get to know the people in the community, then you may want to take it further. On that particular subject, I wanted to share with you something. So first of all, I have to say I'm just celebrating the fact that the podcast is 1. And I was looking back at some of the previous episodes and what's been most popular. And we've had 28 guests on the show and we've had 25 solo episodes. And I've been quite surprised to see that the solo episodes are just as popular as the guest episodes. So you guys actually really like my perspective on slow living, I guess, which is really quite how lovely. I don't even know the words to put into it. I mean, one of the most popular episodes ever was my episode on real self-care and what it actually is, because I feel like it's been over-commercialised, and there are so many little factors that go into creating a life that actually takes care of you. And also the power of language. That was another one, like the words we use create our experience of life. And so those two have been really popular. And surprisingly, when it comes to guest episodes, my philosophy has always been that I don't have a time limit on how long they are. It all comes down to the conversation. So some of the conversations that I have are very direct and very specific and straight to the point. And I love those episodes. They really give a lot of value. But then so do the episodes that take an hour and the conversation meanders and we go on tangents, particularly ones like the couple of the longer episodes like Slow Postpartum, How to Have a Slow Postpartum with Jojo Hogan, one of the most popular ones, and it's nearly an hour long. And Nicole Matheson, she spoke about how to reconnect with your partner after you've had kids. A huge, huge topic and a big problem for a lot of couples. It's a tricky time to navigate a relationship when you have kids, and it is possible to reconnect, after those early years, if you can make it through the stress of the first 5 years. So that was a popular one as well. There are so many popular ones, actually. They're all equally actually as popular as others. And that's why I know that. So we have recently hit 10,000 downloads of the podcast. So that's nearly an average of 200 listens per episode. And to be honest, I know that I've got a small but committed and dedicated community, because every episode these days gets around the same amount of downloads. And to me that says that, and it's, every Wednesday when the episode comes out, bang, 150 listens, and then, dribs and drabs throughout the next couple of days, you can just see on the day when the podcast has come out. So I know that it's the same people, the same 150 people listening most of the time, and a few new ones each week. And that's where, I just love that. Because I think about if I was to stand up in front of 200 people and say what I've got to say, I would be petrified. So having this opportunity to share slow living with you in a way that feels quite safe, if I'm honest, it really is a privilege. I can't stress that enough. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. I really do appreciate you in more ways than I can describe. My life has significantly changed and evolved over the last 12 months, and it's not something that I would have anticipated, having happened. I've created a business out of this podcast, and I'm able to help, I'm able to have clients and help my clients work through the process of slow living and look at, and if you've been here with me, I've learned all about matrescence, and I've created the Martyr to Matriarch program, which is all about helping you develop the self-worth to believe that you are capable of leading your family. And it's absolutely one of my favourite things. But I shouldn't say that, because this is my favourite topic. And so everything that I create is one of my favourite things. And how special to be able to create a business around one of your favourite things, right? So that's my encouragement to you, that if you've got some idea or something that you want to talk about, just go and do it, because I'm here now to say that my voice was shaky at the start. I didn't know what to talk about. I didn't know if people would be interested to listen, and I didn't feel confident that I knew enough. But what has happened over 12 months of coming in to do a podcast every single week, I have learnt. I have used this as a platform to practice using my voice around the issues that matter to me, and to come here and speak about things to the point where it flows so much more naturally. And so it's like when they say people, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible enough. Well, actually the purpose of doing yoga is to become flexible. Same thing with a podcast. You can't, if you've got any kind of creative outlet that you want to do, don't wait until you're good at it. The purpose of doing it is to get good at it. So I'm not saying that I'm 100% an amazing podcaster. I've got so much more to learn and so much more growth to happen. But I feel that I want to really celebrate, because that's one thing that we don't do. And this is part of slow living, is that we don't stop to celebrate where we are and to show gratitude for where we are. Hustle culture tells us that we just have to keep going, keep moving the bar, anytime you get close to a goal, lift the bar and keep going and making it further and bigger and more. But the point is to stop and to appreciate where you've come. And doing 1 year of a podcast is a big achievement. So I am taking this 5 seconds to just honour that and to encourage you to do something similar. If you've thought about a podcast, or if you've thought about a blog, if you've thought about, doing painting or a new sport, just do it. It's the stuff that makes life really, really fun. So, yeah. And so on that as well, today I really wanted to offer you something of value. And the exciting thing that's happening in the slow living world is that one of my most favourite slow living authors, Brooke McAlary from the Slow Your Home podcast, her book Slow was a game changer for me. It really solidified a lot of the slow living, movement into one amazing book. And she shares so honestly and openly about so much of her journey into learning to live slow. And she really created a book that gives you a guideline and a framework to work through and identify yourself in her stories. Her new book is coming out very, very soon, in a couple of months. I've pre-ordered my copy. It's called Calm, I believe, or Care. Sorry, it's called Care. And I really can't wait, and I really hope that she comes on the show. I'm going to invite her, so if you're listening to this, please hop over and tell her that she should come on an episode of my podcast, because I would be so privileged to chat with her about her new book. Okay, bit of fangirling there, but I wanted to tell you this because in Brooke's book, she introduced me to the idea of noticing, and this is a really important thing, particularly when and she talks about it being like a different entryway into mindfulness, because, she says, like, we spend a lot of money and time and effort thinking that we need to be mindful, and we have this capitalist way of thinking what mindfulness should look like. And it's actually, being mindful in and of itself is actually quite a painful thing to do, or it's hard to sort of just get started in the way that you think it should look, because so much of our life we have spent trying to avoid being present for various reasons. Many of which include things like not feeling safe, or, some childhood experience that meant that you practiced not being present so that you could, avoid uncomfortable feelings, or maybe you keep yourself busy, or we've got stories about, needing to be busy and that sort of thing. So becoming mindful isn't just a process of switching on your mindfulness. And so that's where she introduced the idea of the river of noticing. And I want to read you a little part from her book Slow. It says, "The morning I went to my garden and saw the first tiny delicate flower where a day earlier there had been none was stunning. It was only a flower, but it was a flower where yesterday there had been only a bud. The changes that had to happen, the events that needed to occur for that single flower to come into being, it may have only been a tiny bloom, but it was an enormous miracle. I'd uncovered one of life's secrets. I'd witnessed a miracle, all because I paid attention. It sounds ridiculous that this tiny change in the garden was so significant to me, but it's undeniable that from this first act of noticing came a slow trickle of more noticing. At first I spent time noticing things in solitude. The smell of jasmine in the air, fairy wrens returning to the jacaranda tree in our backyard. Slowly that trickle of noticing became a stream that began to seep between the plates of my armour. I noticed my daughter's eyes and the way they lit up whenever I said yes to playing. I noticed the warm breath of my son as he slept on my chest. I noticed my heartbeat. I noticed words and how they made me feel. This stream gradually became a river of noticing, smiles and kindnesses, sunsets and opportunities, big things and small, and with it, mindfulness quietly arrived. I didn't realise it at the time, but this awareness, this tapping into the tiny details of life, was strong enough to gradually lift the plates of my armour and eventually wash them clean off. As my raw, real feeling self was revealed, two things began to happen. I began to experience more. More joy, yes, but also more realisation, more discomfort, more pain, more bittersweetness, more awareness of the beauty and tragedy of life. For the first time in many years, maybe ever, I was becoming emotionally available, and it was stunningly uncomfortable. The second thing that happened was I began engaging. I began really listening to what people were saying, considering what I was saying, and paying attention to what I was doing. I suddenly wanted more from life. I just think that really sums up what mindfulness is meant to be. It's meant to be you noticing what's actually going on around you. It's not actually taking 30 minutes every day to meditate or having an elaborate morning routine or all of those things. Those things are all lovely, but real mindfulness is actually, being mindful, like allowing yourself to notice these things and being in the moment and being in your discomfort. And that's why it is actually so hard, because your discomfort comes up to be analysed and processed. But I can tell you from personal experience, when you actually take the time to process those uncomfortable feelings and you become more safe in the present moment because you've dealt, you're comfortable and you feel good about the way that you've handled and processed the feelings that you've been avoiding, you can down-regulate your nervous system to the point where it's more comfortable being slow and it's more comfortable being mindful. And then you can start to notice so much more, of your own unconscious and subconscious patterns and behaviours. And so I'd like to extend a little bit more of an idea about the power of noticing that I've personally witnessed. And that's, I've started to notice where I allow others to overstep my boundaries, where I overstep other people's boundaries, because I think it's really important to honour other people's boundaries too. I've noticed where I say yes out of people pleasing and it's just a habit, and I say no, or I find it so uncomfortable to say no. I've started to look at why I say yes, or what's the real reason I'm saying yes to this? Do I really want to do it? I've noticed when other people are a little bit more unconscious of their own boundaries, and that's quite a fascinating thing to see as well, because the more I can see other people's boundaries being overstepped, the more I can recognise myself and the ways that I perpetuate some toxic habits in my relationships because I'm overstepping other people's boundaries and things. So I think boundaries is a really important part. And I actually have another episode coming up all about boundaries when it comes to working from home and being self-disciplined. So that's going to be quite a fun one. I notice now more about the things that my family does do to help. Like, instead of feeling like I'm the only one that cares or does things around the home, I really take time to notice, the ways that my husband supports us. And that has changed the dynamic in my relationship so that I can have some gratitude for him, even despite feeling resentment as well, because you can have both. I notice my reactions and my beliefs and coming back to habits, and I can start to undo those things. I can start to, instead of react, I can start to notice that I'm about to react to something and find a new way so that I can change that dynamic. And this is really powerful stuff. And I start to notice that the messages that my feelings have, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I'm feeling tired or resentful, those are hidden emotions, because we don't really, particularly overwhelm, tiredness and resentment, we don't actually realise that those are what we're feeling a lot of the time. We just don't feel good, and it's hidden in plain sight. And so taking the time to notice and to commit to the slower way of life really allows you to understand the messages underneath the tiredness, underneath the resentment, underneath the anger. What is it trying to tell you, so that you can start to look at what you need to change and what you personally need to feel good and safe again. So the power of noticing really is so much more valuable than just simple mindfulness. And that's what I'd love to leave you with today. So thank you for joining me over a year of How to Live Slow. And I cannot wait to see where things head in the year to come. If you've got any ideas or suggestions for topics that you would like me to cover here, please send me an email or a DM, get in contact however you can. Obviously, all the links to anything required for that purpose are in the show notes, so you can access me on my website or Instagram or email. And yeah, I hope you've had an amazing Easter, and that if you're on school holidays still, that you are enjoying some time with your kids and with your family, and that you're able to slow down a little bit. See you next week. Bye. that's it for another episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like to connect further, the show notes from today's episode, including all the social links and free resources, are over on my website, howtoliveslow.com/podcast. Have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll speak with you again soon.